What's up, everyone? Good morning. I hope you're all doing well. Let me make sure my audio's doing okay. Cool. Hopefully you guys can hear me. I know last week we had some weird technical issues, but anyway, here we are. Welcome back to the Skywatcher What's Up webcast. We do this every Friday, 10 a.m. Pacific, right here from the Skywatcher USA YouTube channel. We cover everything from what's up in the nighttime sky to equipment to helpful tips and tricks. And of course, at the end of the month, we have a special guest to talk about their specialty in the field of astronomy. As we get started, if you like what you see here, please go ahead and subscribe, leave a like on a video, the typical YouTube stuff. If you have an idea for an episode, email us at info@skywatcherusa.com, title it What's Up. You can also put it in the comments below if there's something you're looking for. We do peruse the comments multiple times a week just to see if there's any questions and stuff like that. I will actually say, as someone who's been looking and answering questions on the comment sections of our videos, if you leave a question about like a technical question about a product, especially on older videos, you might not get the answers you're looking for. If you need help on equipment, please email support@skywatcherusa.com. You'll get a much better answer because that's where the support questions should be going. We try our best to manage the YouTube comments and questions, but if you actually have like a legitimate issue or thing that needs to be addressed with products, we have a support email. It makes a ticket. We can track it. You can do all of that stuff. It has come up before where someone will leave a comment and be like, I haven't heard from you. That's not the appropriate location. Just email support. We'll get you taken care of. All said and done. Another thing that's going on, we have a bunch of sales, and if you want to keep up with what's going on at Skywatcher, you can head over to skywatcherusa.com, hit subscribe and save up at the top corner there, and you can join our email list. We give emails once a week about the topic for the webcast and sales, and then we do our monthly email blast that tells you all kinds of other cool things, like what's going to be going on for the month. And speaking of that, all of our Dobsonians are on sale this month. Again, this is recorded. This was done live August 2nd, 2024. So if you're watching in the future, the sales probably are over. But you can head over to skywatcherusa.com. We've got a bunch of Dobsonians on sale. If you're looking to get a big aperture scope and save some money on that, you can head over to our website. Check that out, or check with your favorite dealer, whatever works for you. We have been getting some questions on when the wave mounts are supposed to show up, when the wave is supposed to hit. So for those of you who have been waiting on the wave series, we just got confirmation that the first shipment is just about to head out. So we should see them here in the States by the end of August. It takes some time to get them. And then there'll probably be a couple weeks where they have to go through the US QC team. It is a new product. It's a new shipment, and they are not used to inspecting these new products. So there'll probably be a couple weeks as they go through the QA process here in the US. And then after that, I'd probably say mid-September, hopefully, they will be on their way to the first set of owners. So please be patient. It's just taken some time to get them here. We are excited to show them off and get them to you guys. If you're going to be up at Ontario Starfest next week, we are getting ready to head out in the next few days. We're going to be heading up to Canada. The Skywatcher team will be heading up to Starfest 2024. If you want to stop by our booth, I'm not exactly sure where it's going to be yet, but our whole crew, most of our crew will be there. Myself, our lead, Jeff Simon will be there, and of course Jared Donkers, lead marketing. We will all three be there hanging out with Trevor and Ashley from Astro Backyard, as well as some other friends of ours. Richard Wright will be there, who will actually be our special guest at the end of this month, I believe, talking about all kinds of stuff, astronomy. So we'll all be hanging out there for next week. But if you want to see the wave mounts in person, in action, we will have one of each at Starfest, and maybe even some other stuff that we haven't even talked about. There is some surprises that have been shipped up to Canada that are been put on the down low. So stop by our booth, check out what we've got. But yeah, if you are up in Canada and you're attending Starfest and you want to see the wave mounts, that will be our big thing, or not so big thing size-wise, at our area. But come check them out. We'll have one of each, messing around with them. So that's what's going on there. If you want to support the channel, please go over to skywatcher.threadless.com. There's all kinds of cool swag. I know some of you have been buying stuff. I'm glad you're enjoying the phone cases. But there's a bunch of stuff there. Head over there if you want to support the channel even more. We greatly appreciate it. On a smaller note that has to do with the actual studio here, I know a lot of people have enjoyed the fish tank that's back here. That's moving. That's going to move out of the studio. I have found it is too difficult to lug water back in here. There's carpet in here. And as much as I love having the tank in here, it needs to go somewhere that's a lot easier for it to be maintained, especially saltwater tanks. So unfortunately, as cool as this thing has been in here, this one is leaving. We'll upgrade to a larger one, but that is going to go outside the studio here just to have some more easier to support the livestock that's actually in that tank. So you would actually be really surprised how similar saltwater fish tanks are to astrophotography, cable management, a lot of that. So yeah, so they don't always get moved around. It's just how it works. So, but anyway, letting you guys know there will be some physical changes in here over the next couple weeks. I got to get through Starfest first, and then we can figure out the rest of it. But all right, so let's go ahead and get started. Today we are talking about what's up for the month, and yeah, so let's get started. Of course, we have the moon, the brightest object in the sky. Now, new moon is actually August 4th, so that's this weekend. So if you're trying to get out to do some dark sky events, I know there's some other big star parties going on this year. You can go and enjoy that dark weekend tonight and the next couple nights and actually have a good time under that stunning Milky Way. Again, the weekend is the 3rd and the 4th. So there you go right there. That is the new moon weekend for August. But yes, there are other star parties going on, but that is also why our Ontario Starfest is happening. So full moon weekend is at the end of the month. August 20th is the full moon for the month, and that is the sturgeon moon. Now, the full moon gets its name generally from the large sturgeon fish that were still are usually caught this time of year up in the Great Lakes region of the U.S. and North America. So that's where the nickname for this full moon comes from. So there you go. Planets. So planets right now, we're just about to get... That's what I forgot to open. I knew there was something else I didn't open, and that was Stellarium. If you've watched the webcast before, Stellarium is a free planetarium software that a lot of people actually use. Let me get this open here. It does this weird thing where I can't see my arrow until I get it out of full screen mode. Let me go ahead and just get the times set up here. I usually have this prep, but I knew there was something that wasn't done. There we go. So here's Stellarium. Stellarium is a free software you can get online. I think it's even an app now. I don't pay attention to a lot of stuff after a while. It all becomes one thing. But we're in the middle of summer right now. So we've got Scorpio, Sagittarius, Ophiuchus. Virgo is still up. Hercules nice and high. You have... let's see, Aquila, Cygnus, Vega, and now you're actually getting Cepheus too. Cepheus is one of my favorite constellations to image in because everything in there is just weird, dark, and dusty. So for those of you who are going to be wondering what the target of the month for next month will be, odds are it'll be something in Cepheus. I'm trying to make sure that we accommodate a lot of our friends up north in Canada, and that can be very difficult at times. So I know we've had a couple times where we've picked a target that's a little too far south. So apologies about that. It's just sometimes it's just how it ends up. But we try to make sure we get something that everyone in North America can actually obtain. So hopefully it'll be something up in Cepheus. This month for August, it is in Cygnus. So we'll get to that in a little bit. So now for planets right now, there's really nothing visible in the early hours of the night, at least in the first part of the month. But we are going to start to get Saturn. Saturn's coming up about 10 o'clock or so right now in the early part of the month. But as the month progresses, there'll be a really cool collection with them right here. You'll have a pretty decent moon, and Saturn will be visible. That's on the 20th around 9 o'clock. But by the end of the month, Saturn will be breaking the horizon about 8 o'clock. So we are going to start to see the rise of the planets back into the evening sky by the end of August, which will be really nice. As hopefully temperatures start to level off and become a little bit more comfortable. It's been rather toasty here in the Southwest. We just have to get to about September, maybe mid-September before things start to alleviate a little bit. But we're going to get Saturn back in the night sky, so that'll be really nice to actually get that. Saturn's always a fun one. Jupiter will be following not much further, especially as we get more into autumn. We'll start to see some of those planets actually pop back up into the evening sky. But for now, there's not really anything else as far as planets go. If you really want to get to the planets and view them, you need to get up early when they're nice and high, or stay up late into the night. But we will be getting the planets as we move again further into autumn. We'll get the planets a little bit more, but Saturn will be the first one this year to break the eastern horizon. So that'll be a lot easier by the end of the month. The sun, of course, we are ramping into solar maximum right now. All the eclipses are done, but that doesn't mean the sun is done. The sun right now is becoming very, very active. 2025 or next year is technically solar maximum, I believe. But it's very, very impressive right now. There's actually a lot of activity going on. Let me bring that up. This is Gong. You can type in Gong, G-O-N-G-H alpha into Google and then just follow them. But you can see there's quite a bit of detail up there. There's nothing that's updated. Big Bear's pretty. There we go. So there's a lot of sunspots up there. There's some really nice filaments. Some decent prominences up there too. This is in hydrogen alpha. So if you want to get out and view the sun like we're seeing here, you need a hydrogen alpha telescope, something like a Daystar or a Lunt solar scope, and you can go out and check that out. Again, I have to say this every time. Please make sure you're using the proper equipment when observing the sun. And when we do talk about hydrogen alpha telescopes for the sun, we are not talking hydrogen alpha imaging filters. They are not designed to handle the heat load when observing the sun, and they are not nearly narrow enough to get the details you're looking for on the sun. So do not go out and put some nighttime imaging H alpha filter in your optical train, and expect to see the sun like this. You need a dedicated solar telescope or a dedicated set of H alpha filters to get this kind of detail. But there's a lot going on up there right now. So if you have a hydrogen alpha solar telescope, there's a lot going on right now. So pop it out there and check it out. You can also go to star parties. If you're heading out to star parties, that's a great time to see some hydrogen alpha equipment, because odds are somebody out there during the day is going to have a solar telescope to look at the sun with. Because what else do you do during a star party except sleep? So, as for white light, we can go over to space weather. There's a lot of sunspots right now. If you have a white light filter, it's probably pretty impressive to go out and view. Luckily, white light filters are very, very easy to come by. If you have a calcium filter, now would be the time to break it out. There's a ton of detail with these plages, these white, like cracked regions. All that would look really cool in calcium if you have a calcium K or calcium H solar filter. Now would be the time to really pop that out with all this activity. It's going to look great. So That's what's going on with the sun right now. It's actually looking pretty good, but it's changing all the time, so it's definitely worth going out and checking it out. Meteor showers. It's been pretty quiet for meteor showers lately. It normally is during the summer, but now we're in August, and August is the king of meteor showers with the Perseids. The Perseid meteor shower is the largest meteor shower of the year, about 50 to 75 meters an hour. The peak is 11 to 12. So if you're going out to some dark sky events in the next week or so, there's a good chance you're going to see a bundle of shooting stars because we are ramping up into the Perseid peak at this point. And it's actually fairly well placed with the moon right now. Even during the peak, the moon will still be in the sky, but it should set before it's really peaked after midnight. How do you guys handle the nighttime summer bugs? I have bugs on my 8-inch mirror, but no visual effect. So there's a question here on how we handle bugs during the summer, and he's got bugs on his mirror. Okay, so this actually brings up something. So we have some time to kill on this episode. A lot of times this will come up where people are stating, I have whatever on my lens. I have whatever on my mirror. It happens. You're going to get dust. You're going to get bugs. You're going to get smudges, all kinds of stuff. It's okay to have stuff on a lens or mirror. You know, it happens over time and use. And there is a telescope at McDonald Observatory that has 6 bullet holes in the mirror. There's a whole other story to that one. And they still use it every night they can for research purposes, and it works just fine. So yeah, over time, you're going to get gunk on your optics. Optics are not designed to be perfect all the time. I mean, the minute you open it out of the box, it's going to get dust on it. If it's outside, it's going to get junk on it. It's okay. It won't affect the overall use of the telescope. That also happens a lot with imagers. I've seen it a lot doing tech support and repairs where someone will see like a smudge on a lens or their mirror and they're freaking out that it's going to affect their imaging or their images, or they see some kind of dust mote, something blocking their image, and they're complaining that, oh, it has to be the mirror. Nothing affects your image in your telescope until it gets closer to the focus point. So you can have a monster chip on your mirror or lens and it would work fine unless you defocus it and then you see some weird things. It's still going to focus light though. So it's okay if your mirror gets dirty. I wash my mirrors maybe once a year. My 28-inch is almost 3 years old at this point. It's never had a bath yet. It really needs one. It has some bubbles in the surface of the mirror. Wouldn't know. So you can get away with quite a bit before your image is actually affected by it. So if you want to know more about bullet holes in the telescope mirror, just Google McDonald Observatory bullet holes in mirror. I'm sure something will come up. Basically, the telescope operator went crazy and took a 6-shooter revolver and pounded 6 rounds into the primary mirror. And there are pictures of it. And so the next time someone's complaining to you about how their lens or mirror is dirty and there's gunk all over it, bring up the bullet holes in the primary mirror of a telescope. It still works fine. So, but yeah, if you have bugs on your mirror, it happens. They'll probably go away. But yeah, about once a year, it's probably worth cleaning your optics. It's just kind of general maintenance. Maybe every other year, depending on what it is. So. Comets. I need comets to come up. So right now, there's not a lot in the news about comets. Let me bring up this really quick. So I use cometchasing.skyhound.com. This is the website I like to use with anything comet related. They haven't updated the video yet to August, but their videos are really nice because it just gives you a rundown of what comets you really want to take a look at. So right now, there's nothing huge going on. This one right here, 13P Olbers, is up in Ursa Major, 7th magnitude, 7.3, so it's just outside of naked eye visibility from probably a dark sky site. But right now, there's nothing much going on as far as comets go at this point. This one right here, the C2023A3, this one could get interesting at the end of next month, September. So we want to keep an eye on that one. It was really cool to see from Grand Canyon when it was still up in Virgo through the bigger telescopes. You could see the tail and stuff. So I'm kind of curious how that's going to come out. But if you want to keep an eye on comets, head over to cometchasing.skyhound.com and check out all the details of what comets are regularly visible right now. It's worth taking a look at and checking that out. So, but right now everything does require a telescope, nothing crazy. But the 13P Olbers, if you're heading out to a dark sky site in the next week or so, maybe check that one out. Might have to check that one out in Canada next week because we've got we're a bit further north on the latitude up there than where I'm at. So about 10 degrees further north. So, all right. Deep sky. So there's a ton of, I could spend an hour or more on deep sky targets right now. So let's see. A question that makes things easier. What's a good affordable solar telescope that you recommend? Well, affordable and solar are two different parts of the conversation. So, you can get a basic white light filter for basically any telescope that you want. But if you're talking hydrogen alpha, there is not a lot of affordable options out there. So here's where I would recommend the best telescope for the money, in my opinion, right now, that's hydrogen alpha, that's dedicated, is the Lunt 40. The Lunt LS40T telescope, I have one, is a phenomenal little telescope, and they're under $1,000. I think they're between $600 to $1,000 depending on its configuration. There's nothing that's really affordable in the terms of hydrogen alpha solar. If you're looking for something that's just a couple $100, unless you're going on the used market and finding like a used PST or something like that. But if you're looking for something new, a Lunt 40 is hard to beat, especially if you get like a double stacked one. Those are phenomenal telescopes. But again, you're inching pretty close to just under $1,000 to get started in hydrogen alpha viewing. Now, if you have a refractor laying around, you can pick up one of the Daystar Quarks, which is a hydrogen alpha filter assembly that drops into the back of the telescope. And that also works really well too. But do your research, talk to both companies, but be advised that you are probably spending $700 or $800 or more to get started in hydrogen alpha solar filters. That's just how it is because we're working with Etalons. Actually, here's an Etalon right here. I think this is from a Lunt 50, but there's an Etalon right there. An Etalon is basically the heart of a hydrogen alpha imaging or hydrogen alpha telescope. An Etalon is a very precise yet simple assembly where light goes through, bounces around until it hits the right register, and then passes through and goes on to the next set of filters. But Etalons are fairly difficult to manufacture accurately, so they can be a bit spendy for their size, and that's really where a lot of the money goes into a solar telescope there. So that's why they're expensive. It's a collection of filters. It's not just one. So let's get to targets. So T Lyra, we talked about this last month. T Lyra is a carbon star in the constellation of Lyra, about 2,400 light years away. You can really do it in any sky, but it's a beautiful carbon star. Carbon stars are stars that are kind of at the end of their life, and they're starting to burn carbon, which turns them this deep red color. Now, T Lyra is probably one of the most dramatic as far as color goes. It's like Coke can red. It's like a ruby among the other stars in the field. It's very striking when you finally see it. So T Lyra is a really fun star to actually observe. I am not big on observing stars. Like, I'm not into binary stars or anything like that. But carbons are really cool because they're very striking. And they're just neat. So T Lyra is a very good one. Probably one of the best because it's one of the deepest red stars out there. And it's easy to get because it's nice and high up in the constellation of Lyra the Harp. So check that one out. It's pretty much opposite Vega from the double set of stars. So it's not difficult to find. And if you have a go-to telescope, you can either put in the right ascension and declination coordinates, or sometimes it's even in the system already. A lot of times it's not listed, so I would recommend just saving it in some of the user object databases because it's a fun one to go after and look. So the Ring Nebula, M57. So the Ring Nebula is probably one of the easiest planetary nebulas to actually observe. It was the first planetary nebula I ever looked at with a little 6-inch f5 Newtonian. And it's one of those cool things where if you're brand new to the hobby and you're getting away from just observing the moon and planets and you want something different, it's a slight challenge to find. It's not difficult to find, but if you're getting new to star hopping, it's relatively easy to find, but it's still a little bit challenging. It's one of those fun ones where if you're just putting your toe into the deep end of deep sky observing, it's something you can do from the average backyard. But there is something to be said the first time that you stumble across an object that you're looking for. It kind of gives you that time that you yourself discovered it on your own. And there's something very cool about that and rewarding. And I still remember finding it for the first time. And it was just cool to be able to look through your telescope and be like, wow, I found it. There it is. But the Ring Nebula is a pretty easy object to find. If you're doing in-town observation, the aid of a UHC or an oxygen 3 filter will really help pop that out more. So the Ring Nebula is a good one to go after. You won't get the color, but you can get some of the structure. The central star that you see there in the middle is really a bit of a challenge to see visually. You need a fairly large telescope, probably at least a 16-inch with some high power. But the bigger the telescope, the better the seeing. And the more magnification you use, the better chance you actually have of seeing that central star. So the central star is the challenge of that. Imaging-wise, the harder thing to do imaging-wise is getting the outer halo of the Ring Nebula, because it is a deep hydrogen. It's a halo composed of hydrogen. So you want to use hydrogen alpha filters and probably some fairly long exposures, but then you're going to blow out the nebula core. So you're going to have to know how to process that to bring it all out. But there is an outer halo there, and it's a fun one to go after. It kind of looks like a flower a bit. But the Ring Nebula is a great all-around object. It's challenging in its own ways, but it's not difficult overall to see. So definitely one of the prime favorites of the summertime skies. Now, high overhead right now, we have M13, the Hercules star cluster, about 25,000 light years away. It's about 175 light years wide and about 500,000 to 1 million stars. Globular clusters are very easy objects to observe. They are not generally affected by light pollution as much because they're stellar rather than like a nebula. So trying to see them is not all that difficult. They are obviously much better in the dark skies because you get better contrast and resolution and stuff like that without light pollution. But M13 is a very easy object to see even in some of the worst light pollution, but it gets more impressive the further out that you go. Now, there is one little thing that you can catch in M13 that's kind of cool. You can kind of see it right here. There's 1, 2, 3 little dark lanes there. That's called the propeller. It's just a unique detail of M13, and you can actually see that in halfway decent sized telescopes, probably 10-inch and larger. The more telescope you got, the bigger the aperture, the easier it is to see the propeller. But it's just kind of a cool little detail that you can see inside the cluster there. And there's also the little galaxy that's just off the frame there as well. Let's see. Question from Tolga. Would you recommend Skywatcher 100 ED or 80 ED for summer objects? They're priced quite similar, and I don't know which one to consider buying. Are you doing visual or are you doing imaging? Because if you're doing visual work, I would say go with the biggest telescope that you can afford. Both of them are fairly easy to set up. The 80 ED is going to be smaller and more compact. So if that's a big plus, I would definitely go for the 80 if you're limited on space. Honestly, the difference between the two isn't the end of the world. It's visual. If it's visual, I would go with the 100. The 100 is going to give you 80% more light than the 80 will. And the 100 is a bit longer because it's f9 versus f7.5. You're at 900 millimeter focal length versus 600 millimeters. Honestly, if you're under 1,000 millimeters, you can get like a low power eyepiece, like a 30 or 40, and still be able to bring in a decent chunk of the sky, even at like 900 millimeters on the 100. So if I had to pick between the two, I would go with the 100 overall. If you were imaging, I'd probably say the 80 because you don't need the extra focal length. But for visual, the 100. The 100's a really nice telescope. It's a bit of a sleeper because it's one of the very, very few telescopes out there that's f9. Everything nowadays has been shifted to faster and faster, like f7 or faster for imaging purposes, which is great. But the 100's f9, so it's really sharp. It's fairly lightweight for its size. The contrast in there's very good. There's a big difference between 100 and an 80 millimeter visually. You're just going to get a lot more punch into the nighttime sky. And under a dark sky, that 100 ED is phenomenal. But with the planets coming around, you would be surprised how awesome that 100 ED is for planets. That 4-inch size is really kind of a magical number for refractors. I feel like you're just starting to get into a serious refractor at 4-inch. 80s aren't bad. There's nothing wrong with the 80s. But if you can swing it and you have the capabilities, just go up to 100 because visually 100 is a much better experience visually, in my opinion. But the 100 ED is a highly flexible telescope. So you can do wide field with it. It can handle high power. It does great on double stars. It does amazing on the moon and the planets. And it works on nearly any mount out there other than like the Star Adventurers and the smaller mounts. But any average mount can hold the 100. The Tulip Nebula. So this is nice and high up in Cygnus, about 6,000 light years away. This is Sharpless 101. This is a very challenging object visually. If you're trying to do this visually, you probably need a night vision device to pop it out because it's mostly hydrogen. You could try from dark skies with an H-beta filter. I've never tried that. I'll have to give that a go. But again, dark skies and an H-beta filter, you could try to see it. You might get a little ghostly rendition of it. But with a decent-sized telescope and a night vision with an imaging hydrogen alpha filter, big, easy target. Imaging-wise, however, it is an easy target. From a dark sky site, a one-shot color camera has no problem taking care of it. But it's quite stunning in narrowband, especially like the Hubble palettes. There's just a lot of really nice intricate detail that I've seen in here. So the tulip is a very cool object. It's kind of hidden amongst a lot of the other nebulas that are up inside the constellation of Cygnus. And it can get overlooked because you have a ton of other objects to actually observe in Cygnus, like the North American Nebula, the Veil, the Crescent Nebula, and then not far from there, you have, the Dumbbell Nebula, the Ring Nebula. There's a lot of stuff in the summer, so it gets overlooked quite a bit. But the tulip is a very cool imaging target. And if you're looking for something really challenging visual, give it a try. But because it's mostly hydrogen, you'd need a hydrogen beta filter to actually see it. Another very difficult target, I don't even consider this a visual target, would be Pi Scorpii, 590 light years away. This is a reflection nebula. There is some hydrogen in the region, so don't be afraid to add some hydrogen data if you're shooting H alpha with it. It would probably look even better at a wider field. This was an Esprit 150 with a full frame camera, and I probably would have been better closer to like 500 or 600 millimeter focal length and getting more of the expanse around it, because there's a lot more to this nebula than just the region that we see here. But again, it's a reflection nebula, and there's no filters that help with reflection nebulas. So this is a somewhat difficult target to do in town. This is a good dark sky target. And if you have the ability to do luminance and do a really nice deep luminance image, this would be the one that you'd want to do that on. Or if you're shooting one-shot color, you're going to need to put some decent exposure time in there to bring out the details. Of course, we also have M8 Sagittarius. M8 is like the Orion Nebula of the summer. It is big. It is bright. It is easy to see visually. Even in light polluted skies, you can see there is some kind of ghostly cloud in the region. Pop in an O3 or a UHC, it becomes more interesting. To get rid of some of that light. Even better from darker skies, you really get the idea of how big it actually is, because it will take up a large chunk of the field. There's a lot of little intricate dark nebulas that are kind of sprinkled around in there. It's a really cool target to image, especially if you do somewhat that's a fairly wide field of view, because there's a lot of extension that comes off of this nebula, even to the point where it almost reaches out to its nearest neighbor, the Trifid M20, which we'll talk about here next. Wonder if I could actually just find that, because I've actually shot it in a mosaic. I'll find it while we're talking here. But the Lagoon Nebula is a very, very bright emission nebula. It's here in the northern hemisphere. And, well, you can actually get it in the southern hemisphere because it's in Sagittarius region right there. And it's just an overall impressive region. Let me see. There it is. Let's see. What filter do you recommend for M8? I have it on the list. Filter for imaging or filter for visual? If we're doing visual filters, it's probably going to be O3 or UHC. UHCs are broader band filters, so they let a wider range of light through. So they can be really helpful for certain things. And O3 is a narrow band, so it's going to be way more selective at that point. But, for imaging. For imaging, yeah, if you're using like a color, probably like a dual band, the L Enhance is a great filter for that. If you want something that's even more selective, I really like the Antlia H Alpha O3 dual band. That's a really, really good one as well. But that's what I would recommend. Here is the mosaic shot where I shot M20 and M8, two separate frames, and then stitched them together. But you can see there's a lot of nebulosity that actually comes off the north here. This isn't done with filters. This is just one shot color and really dark skies. But you can see it actually comes out quite well. but they're fairly close to each other, and there's a lot of complex nebulosity in here as well. So, but you can see how close the two are together to one another up there. So, boop. There's another question. Do O3 and UHC affect the color when viewing? I have an old DGM filter, and it's annoying red tint to everything. There are some filters that have that weird red tint to it. It's just how the filter kind of selects the colors. O3 won't get that. O3 is a narrow band, so it is killing everything in there except oxygen 3, which is more in the blue cyan area, green, blue, turquoise kind of area. So O3, you shouldn't get much of that reddening. UHCs, I have seen it. I don't remember if my astronomic UHC displayed that, but TeleVue has their own version of a UHC. I forgot exactly what it's called. Let me find it. TeleVue.com. Because TeleVue doesn't have a UHC. They have like a modified version that's also made by Astronomic, the German filter company Astronomic, not Astronomics here in the US. He's a great dealer, by the way. It's just two different companies. Let's see. Here we go. So they call them bandmate filters for TeleVue, but they are made by Astronomics in Germany, so they are very good filters. So they have an O3, they have an H-beta, Nebustar. So the Nebustar is very similar to an or a UHC, but it blocks those red wavelengths. You can see right here, it actually tells you that in the design. So it blocks that red wavelength, so you don't get that weird red bloating like you would on other UHCs. So if you're looking for something like that, and you don't want that weird red bloating, like I said, you should look at the Nebustar filter from TeleVue. That would be the way to approach it if you want that look. So I don't have one. I probably should get them. But I have filters and they work fine. But astronomic filters are probably my favorite for visual purposes. I do have a few of the Optolong filter, just visual ones. They work fine. But I like the quality of the astronomic filters a little bit better. Their cells are really nice. They're just really well executed. Let's see. Summer sucks in North Carolina. Can't see a thing with heavy humidity at night. Yeah, out here in the desert, it's monsoon season starting about July. So right now, our weather has not been great for astronomy either. That's just kind of how it works. So, but the rest of the year, it's usually fine. So, M20 also in Sagittarius, not far from the Lagoon Nebula, as you saw from that 2-panel mosaic. M20 is a little bit more challenging because there's a lot going on in M20. M20 is 3 major portions of nebula. You have the emission, which is the pink, the reflection, which is the blue, and the dark, which is the black. You need really dark skies to get that blue reflection nebula to come out. I did see it at Grand Canyon this year. We actually had the Stellar View 180 triplet out. That was probably one of the best views of the triplet I've ever seen, particularly for the reflection nebula. And the refractor just does such a nice job because it's got contrast. What it lacks in aperture, refractors usually make up in contrast, which is a big deal in my opinion. Especially when you're in dark skies, that contrast will really help pop things out. So that's why I like using refractors. If I'm not using a large aperture Dob, I like using refractors because of that contrast. Now, the emission portion, that pink portion, you can actually get detail with UHC. O3 can help. This is a really interesting object if you're doing narrowband imaging as well, because you can do really strange Hubble palettes with this, and the Lagoon, because it has a lot of signal in the three major filters, which is H alpha, O3, and S2. Those three channels are quite dynamic. The Veil Nebula, this is up in Cygnus, my personal favorite, about 2,000 light years away. This is a big, big target. It's over 3 degrees in diameter. So you can either get a little telescope, like our Spree 100 or something like that, 600, 500, 600 millimeter focal length, and a really wide eyepiece, and you can get all of it. Looks like a pair of parentheses. Or you can get a big telescope, lots of aperture, and you can actually take a tour of the veil, which usually lasts about 30 minutes to an hour, depending on how much aperture and how much time you spend on each portion. But if you're ever out in a dark sky site, and I've got my big 28, and if we're doing the veil, it's normally about a 45-minute to an hour tour, because we break it up into sections, and there's a lot of really fine, intricate detail there when you take your time to actually observe it. Definitely worth it. Imaging wise, it's actually not terribly difficult to image. There's a lot of hydrogen alpha in there. There's a lot of oxygen 3, very, very little sulfur visible up here. So it's a great bicolor target. So definitely go out and check that out if you want to. But the veil is awesome. But you are going to need darker skies if you're doing it visually. It's a very difficult target in town. And you don't need to be crazy dark skies. But an O3 filter is really the key for this one. UHC does a nice job, but there's a lot of O3 up there. So I find that O3s are generally a bit better on the veil than a UHC. But in a pinch, if you don't have an O3 filter, a UHC is fine. This was a shot from our remote observatory. This is a 14-panel mosaic. This is that luminance one-shot color combo I was doing for a while. So it's definitely worth checking out at that point. But the veil's awesome. Highly recommend it. Of course, the big thing right now is the Milky Way. So Milky Way is just awesome this time of year. If you're heading out to dark sky sites, it's definitely worth checking out. So definitely go over there and check that out. Make sure that you just spend some time at this point. It's definitely worth just looking at the Milky Way. Sometimes my favorite thing is to just step away from the telescope and just kind of sit there in the chair and just watch. So that's kind of cool. Are you able to see any color, nebula, or globular in the 28? You can get some pink tones in some of the brighter nebulas with the 28 if you're careful. I haven't seen color in the globular clusters, but everyone's eye may vary. The Stellar View 180, I don't see color in that one. There's just not enough aperture. But on the planets and the moon, that scope is unbelievable. The Stellar View 180 is probably the best refractor I have ever owned, period. As one would expect with a caliber of scope like that. There is a lot of affordable versions out there. I've looked through them. They're not as good as the 180 Stellar View is, or probably any other of the top tier manufacturers go. But if you want that 7-inch refractor experience, there's very few options out there. Although a 150 does a pretty good job keeping up with a 7-inch. And a 7-inch is a big refractor. Like, it's big. So you need a big mount. A 150 refractor, however, you're losing a little bit of light, but they're much easier to work with, and the amounts that you have to choose from, much wider variety and more affordable than what a 180 would require. So, this is the Grand Canyon. This is Moonrise, is where this picture was shot. It's a panorama. I don't remember how many frames I stitched for this, but this is the north rim of the Grand Canyon over here. This is the south rim over here, and this is actually the moon rising. So, yeah. All right, target of the month. So July was Rho Ophiuchus. We will start getting your patches all ready to go. I'm raking them together. Like I said, there might be a little bit of a delay for this one because we're heading out to Starfest next week. So it'll probably be at least mid-month before we get to ship the July entries out, but you'll get them. Don't worry about it. So we'll get them together. We got an event to do. So, but August. So August is a very challenging target. This is the Flying Dragon. And this is actually shot by our friend Ron Brecher. Canadian as well, who will also be at Starfest. So thanks to Ron for letting us use his picture. But this is the Flying Dragon. It's up in Cygnus. So go out there, check that one out. This one you could probably get by with hydrogen alpha filters. So if you're looking for recommendations on how to shoot it, H alpha is probably the key to this one. But yeah, that would be it. So I'm eager to see you guys do this one because there's not a lot of people that shoot this target. And that is really the whole point of Target of the Month, is to push out lesser known targets that people just don't go after. So we're trying to kind of push you guys and then see what new stuff you guys can come up with. So Sharpless 114 or the Flying Dragon is what this one is. And it is in Cygnus, so everyone should be able to get it nice and high this time of year. So if you are at Starfest and you shoot the Target of the Month at Starfest and you come up to us and show us the data that you did it, we are planning to have totem patches with us. So if you're going to be at Starfest and you want a totem patch, shoot this target, stop by, and as long as we have the patches available still, you can actually walk with your patch right there. So we will have some of them there. So what's the field of view of this target? That's a good question. I probably should have figured that out. What did Ron shoot this with? Let me see if I can find Ron Brecher. AstroDocCA is Ron's website. So here's Ron's website. Ron is an amazing astrophotographer. And what I really appreciate about Ron's images is he doesn't just post a picture. What he does is you can click on it and he gives these really nice write-ups about what it is we're seeing, the details, the actual information about it, and even shows you where it's located. So atop from being one of the best astrophotographers that I know of, I really appreciate from a deep sky observer's perspective that he takes the time to tell you about what's going on here. Let me see what he shot this with. So this was shot with a 10-inch ASA Newtonian and at f6.8. So he had the focal increased a bit. So I don't know what his field of view is on this one, but it's right there. It's probably smaller than a lot of us think. So I'd probably say somewhere about 600 millimeters to 1,000 millimeters should be good, because that was a full frame. And he's shooting 1.1 arc seconds per pixel on an STL 11,000, which is like an ancient sensor by today's standards. So, let's see. Would a modified DSLR with L-enhance work on this month's totem or no filter? If you're shooting in town, you're probably going to want the L-enhance filter in there to get rid of the light pollution in there. So if you're shooting in town, I would shoot with a filter just to kill some of the light pollution in there. So, or go to dark sky sites. So that's it for this month. If you have an idea for another episode, email us at info@skywatchusa.com. Title it What's Up. Please go ahead and subscribe. Leave a like on any of our videos. We greatly appreciate all of your time spending with us and hanging out on Fridays. We do notice the count goes higher and higher every week. for these episodes, so more and more of you are watching and hanging out with us. We really appreciate you spending your time with us on Friday. If you like what you see here, again, like and subscribe to the page. But that is August Night Skies for 2024. Next week, we're talking about building an eyepiece kit. And I mean, not by getting wood and building an eyepiece kit. We're just going over what you should consider when assembling a kit of eyepieces and getting a case and actually building what your observing kit is going to be. So we're going to go over all the details there, and to the best of my abilities, I'll just tell you what I've done, and your mileage may vary. But that's what we're talking about next week. Next week, again, we will be at Ontario Starfest. So we will not be here live. It is a pre-recorded episode. If you have questions, you can just throw them down in the comment section, and I will try to get to those afterwards. We may be able to watch it live just to monitor the chats. But next week is a pre-recorded episode. It is loaded. It is ready to go. And that will air, once again, 10 a.m. Pacific time next week. I hope you guys enjoy it. But that will be next week's episode. And then afterwards, that is our last trip of the year. So the rest of the year will most likely just be standard live episodes unless something comes up. But that is next week's episode. But thanks again for watching, everyone. I hope you have a great weekend. Clear skies. I hope you have a good new moon weekend. Get out and do some observing if you can. And then for those of you that are going to Starfest next week, stop by, say hi. I'll be there. The rest of our team will be there. It should be a lot of fun. Looking forward to meeting you guys. I know I'm doing a talk on product development one of the days. So if you're going to be there, I'll be doing that as well. So we will see you guys next 2 weeks. We'll see you guys back here live. Join us next week for building a eyepiece kit. And then once again, we'll see you guys next week at Starfest. So have a good weekend, everyone. Clear skies. Take care. And we'll talk to you later. Bye.